Welcome, adventurers, to the podcast that goes through everything gaming, with your hosts Benji and Donchap. Wherever you're listening in, get ready to shuffle those cards, roll the dice, and count your victory points, because this is Play Up and Chat. Hey everybody, welcome back to Play Up and Chat, the podcast that goes through everything gaming. This is episode 2 with your hosts Benji.
And you're also with me, Don Chap.
And it's very exciting to get into the second episode because it continues a little bit off of our last episode, digital versus physical, but this time card games.
Exactly. So basically, we're going to be talking about physical versus digital card games. We'll be covering the different type of card games there are. Mention a few honorable titles as well. However, before we get straight into the episode, we have sponsors this time, guys.
Oh, it's such a good thing to have sponsors on board, isn't it? And for our first sponsor for this episode, we have Warmonger Games Malta. They specialize in all things board games, and if you guys want to grab yourself a latest title to add to your collection or add to the list of things to do on a Friday night, the hobby list, you can get a 10% discount on all non-discount board games when using the promo code PULBG, all caps, 3014. That's PULBG 3014. This code expires on the 21st and it's for local use only, and you can get it at warmongergamesmalta.com.
As our second sponsor for the show, we also have the Miniature Corner Studio. You can find them on Facebook and place your order there. You can also use a 10% discount code that they gave us, which is PlayUp21. This is all in lowercase, PlayUp21. Whenever you're using these codes, guys, you'll be helping us indirectly.
Oh yeah, definitely. So if you're gonna buy some board games, buy some board games anyway, you can just head over to the board game shop or even 3D printing. You can head over to our sponsors, and this helps us indirectly.
The other way you can help us is also through our Patreon. You can find us as patreon.com/playupmt. And you can help us out with as little as €3 per month. Every little bit count, guys. If you like what we're doing and you want us to continue doing it and perhaps even improve our podcasts, this is the way to go about it.
Yeah, we love creating this content for you guys at the end of the day, and what we want to do is deliver the best we can do. So every support always helps.
It also gives you access to our Discord server where you can join in the community and talk about your favorite topics, whether it being board games, RPGs, and others.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's time to dive straight into our topic for this week, and that's the digital versus physical card games.
Exactly. So the first stuff is what are the different type of card games that exist out there? So there are three different types of card games. We have CCG, TCG, and LCG.
For all those of you out there who are not familiar with the acronyms, the TCG is the trading card game, the CCG is the collectible card games, and the LCG is the living card games.
Exactly. So the difference between, I think a lot of people kind of go confused with between the CCG and TCG. The TCG is a tradable one. So basically, it's a hobby that you don't have to collect all the card games, all the cards in that specific game you're doing. However, you can trade off. I think the most memorable ones to mention are something like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh. However, they can also be considered CCGs.
Yeah, definitely. You can also collect the cards. I mean, if you're a collector, and I know that you and I, Don, we are some pretty big collectors of some of these card games as well. You can, of course, indeed collect every single one of those cards. But there are games that are specific, card games that are specifically designed to be more of a collector's item.
Also, we're going to realize that, in fact, in relation to a lot of card games in the digital zone, are follow more under the CCG because you can't really trade them off.
Yeah, I mean we're talking about something like some of these games like Magic the Gathering Online and Magic the Gathering Arena, maybe even some Pokemon, but they do allow a little bit of trading. But we'll get on that topic a little more later.
And what is LCG? LCG falls under a CCG in its own term and respect. LCG is a living card game where basically it's you against the game for the most part. There are some automatic mechanics, so to speak, in the physical version where you have to follow up what the master deck, let's call it like that, does for you. But we'll get into that in a bit. We just wanted to cover what are the different type of card games here.
Definitely. So, Don, my first question to you: what are the differences between some of these physical and digital? So let's take TCG. You and I are big, huge fans of Magic the Gathering. What kind of differences can we see? What are the options between the physical and the digital? What's out there?
So, in respects to the physical side of the card game, you are going to see a lot of people that are going to not necessarily collect all the cards. They're just going to get the cards that they need that kind of reflects their personality to play the deck that they want. Or maybe they want to play the top tier deck. So they don't necessarily need those, folders filled with cards. It's just the 60 card deck that they need and moving forward with that. However, when it comes to the digital aspect, it's a lot and a lot based on chance. Or if you're playing something like Hearthstone, you can actually craft them by sacrificing cards you don't need. And majorly, you're going to be trying to collect as many cards to have all the options available to you to build that really good deck that is currently doing well in the meta game.
Oh yeah, definitely. You touched upon a point actually. With the physical, you can buy packs and you can buy single cards, and maybe it's easier to trade around with different cards. And I think that in itself is some big difference between the online and the physical, because I see for a lot of these digital adapted card games, there isn't really a sense of being able to trade or get singles. And as you said yourself, it's just almost all up to chance when getting these booster packs.
Yeah, exactly. So you have very little control on what you're getting. It's like opening a normal booster pack where you have that kind of percentage of what to find in respective to rares, commons, and mythics and such. However, in relation to the actual physical game, you don't actually need to buy boosters to get the cards you want because there are marketplaces online. Card market is one of them that comes to mind at the moment, where you can just basically go on and buy the cards that you need, the amount that you need, and just get them shipped to you. And that's basically it. You got the deck you want. Alternatively, if you are one of those that kind of just loves to open packs and then eventually trades the cards that you don't want from the collection that you just got your hands on to get the cards that you want, maybe need for a certain format of the game, this is where the trading element happens in your local game store or maybe on an online community. I know that's because of the pandemic, especially the physical side of things are happening in a way that, listen, I have these cards up for sale. I'm looking to trade them. Can we do something? Post them to each other, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I just want to jump in here. And yeah, it almost seems like it even adds a little bit of a collector's feel, in the sense that the cards that you buy, physical printed cards, are sort of like an investment, which touches upon a point that we said in our previous episode with the physical board games.
Yes, I mean, we don't even have to look at the hobby store itself, to be honest, or either any market that kind of represents the hobby. I recently watching this TV show where basically people pawn their items, and some guy actually walked in with about like 15 first edition Charizards from Pokemon, and he had them basically rated, officially.
Oh yeah, with the grading. Yes, I think I've seen that episode as well.
So there's a lot out there that certain card games out there can actually touch a different market completely. So yes, there is value to your cards at some point down the line. In relation to digital, you're kind of stuck with what you spend. I don't think there's really much to it other than that, to be honest.
I mean, I don't really see that there is much of a big investment like there is on the physical side, because it's not like we just said, you can't walk into a shop and sell off your digital version of your first edition Charizard. I mean, it's just a representation on your digital game. And it leaves me wondering, like, why and how and where this sort of transition from the physical to the online. And some games are actually preferring, I think, moving towards the digital aspect of their card game rather than the physical.
Yeah, so when it comes to that specific movement, I guess people are moving towards the digital simply because it's easier access. They don't have to wait around to play their hobby with someone they know, friends, family, or even in their local game store waiting for just that one player that happened to play the same game as you do. It's pretty much you log on, you kick someone's ass or get your ass kicked, and move
Yeah.
away from the game. In relation to physical versus digital in its competitive sense, now, we all know that there is a big investment, especially when it comes to certain games like Yu Gi Oh!, Magic, Hearthstone, Pokemon. Things are moving online for esports at the moment, picking off what we were saying earlier.
Yeah, definitely. Esports is a growing scene, and I think something that has indirectly helped the esports scene is, the situation in the world, the pandemic that's been going on, and a lot of things have been pushed online, and even some major tournaments with Magic the Gathering have been actually held online in their online game, Magic the Gathering Arena.
So, as we can see with Hearthstone, for example, which were the first TCG or CCG in their case for the most part, that was just online. I don't believe there is a physical card game at the moment.
There is not a physical to my knowledge. They were just always online from the get-go.
So you can see that Blizzard has always invested on online, and they actually did tournaments, and they were huge. These guys really put their money into just digital, and it paid off. And I think Wizards kind of followed a bit too late, in my opinion, in regards to this. However, they did have Magic Online, which is a very dumbed down version of what Arena currently is. Arena is more GUI heavy, graphic user interface
Yeah.
center heavy.
Well, if you ask me, Magic the Gathering already had a solid, customer base with their physical cards, their printed cards. Since they had such a big market already in the physical, I think it was sort of a new alley to open to get a larger market. And I think sharing both has its positives rather than just focusing just on one. Because I can see the limitations with Hearthstone sometimes.
The only thing that I find as a problem is that all of a sudden, prior actually to the pandemic, we were seeing that Wizards were moving away from giving the spotlight to people who play the physical card game when it comes to large tournaments, so GPs and such, which upset the player base a lot.
Well, of course. Imagine spending all that money on all those printed cards, and they're expensive cards because they're competitive as well. And then all of a sudden it moves on to online. I mean, what's that?
Exactly. In fact, I think they made a move last year to introduce EDH, which is Commander,
Yeah.
as a official format recognized by Wizards now. Simply is telling you that listen, the card game remains at its value, especially with the secret layers and stuff that they were doing. However, it's kind of a statement saying we're not going to pursue any bigger tournaments from here on out for the physical. At least we're not going to give spotlight to that because we are going to give Arena that kind of importance.
Yeah, and it comes out a lot in Arena actually with all the promotions and things that they do. But I want to touch up just a little bit on that bit you mentioned where the card game, the physical printed card game, is still sort of relevant, quote unquote. But we can see how, at least I can see, I think that it is transitioning more of a TCG into a more of a CCG, more of a collector's item rather than more of the trading.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, that's kind of what the secret layer for Wizards is. It's kind of pushing, saying, "Listen, guys, we're still a collectible card game at the end of the day. So having a collection for your sake is a good thing because it's an investment, and they don't want to lose money on that side. I mean, there's a lot of money being made there as well.
Oh, most definitely it is.
One thing that we kind of can see in relation to physical versus digital in this regard, especially in investment wise, is we can see a loss in investment when it comes to the digital side of things. So a lot of the times we end up having to purchase certain amount of in-game currency, let's put it like that, to open up slots for our collection. And eventually, because of the standard rotation, and this even happens in Hearthstone and other card games like Pokemon and such, where they lose their value.
They do, yeah. I think this is sort of taking the move. It's maybe it's more of a business tactic that these companies are doing, because before a printed card, you'd buy, let's say, a booster pack, or you'd buy a box of things, and if you don't get the kind of cards that you want, it's outside the business. You trade, you buy other cards, and what is the business going to see? Not much. But online, as you mentioned, you buy your in-game currency, you exchange those for booster packs in-game. If you don't like what you get, you're going to have to reinvest. You're going to put more money in, and you're going to have to buy more in-game currency, exchange it for more booster packs in the hope that you get the cards you need.
So I'd like to move on to the next topic because I think we kind of exhausted all our options here in relation to this topic. I'd like to move on to the next topic: how to get into which card game for your hobby.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to try to understand, what your likes are, what your dislikes are. I think though a most important thing is there a player base, and are there, friends or a community where you would like to play, that are into these kind of
And
games.
that's more like when it comes to physical. I have to agree with you there. You want to kind of make sure that you do have a friend of yours who you can play with that is interested in the same card game as you are, or there is actually a community that you can actually build into and trade, perhaps. So, this is the physical side. Most of the time, these kind of games have a starter pack. So you can easily just pick one up for about 10 to 15 euro, sit down and start playing immediately out of the box. So it's a small price to pay for starting your collection in a way. And even if you don't continue it from there on forward, you just wanted to try the game, that's relevantly cheap. However, when we look at the digital side of things, you're going to see that you're not going to spend a penny at all. It's free to use, free to play.
Definitely, especially taking examples that we've been talking about, like, let's say, Magic the Gathering, Arena, Pokemon, trading card game online, even Hearthstone. A lot of these you can go in; they're free to play. You get a number of starter packs, either booster packs, or you even get some type of in-game currency which you can trade for more packs and more cards within the game, and you have the option to completely remain free to play. So unless you really need more cards, or you want to get into it competitive, yeah, it's a good, wallet friendly option. Let's say that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much. Again, it's when you're choosing your card game. I mean, we're mentioning the top tiers in relation to the hobby world, right? There are other card games. The one that I can think of, for example, the one that I've recently seen at local game store website, is he brought Dragon Ball, the card game. There is a bit of interest about that card game. Not a lot of people know how to play it. The community is quite small locally for it, I believe. So it's not if you're into the anime or any other card game that you're into because of other resources, whether it being a TV show or such, you have to be careful when you get into it. Why are you getting into it? If you want to pursue it competitively, you have to make sure that there is a player base, as we said, for it. Otherwise, it's going to just sit on your shelf and never play it. Also, when it comes to other card games, I guess that's also relevant.
I mean, there are so many card games out there, and some card games might be more popular than others. Some card games are maybe just a very small collection of CCG, with maybe 100 or 200 cards tops, and that's the entire collection, which you can get into pretty easily. Yeah, those were kind of the main points. So it's like what your friend group are, if you're doing it in physical, what are they interested, if you're going online. It's very easy to tap into that community, but maybe online there are not as many versions of all the printed card games that exist out there. So that's something you got to take into consideration as well. Like, is this card game so good, so interested in it, I'm really like the genre, but is it available online? And these are things to sort of think about before you get into it.
Yeah, in fact, if there is a digital version of the card game, I would suggest you go for that first because usually it's free to pay, as we said, and then perhaps pursue it as a physical option. Given, of course, that you have, as we keep insisting, community and having someone to play with is the most important thing. That being said, just want to move on to the next topic now, which is LCGs. What is different about LCGs is they are a collectible card game. So basically, you usually start off with a starter pack, which introduces you to the games, the rules, and you have the core components to it. One LCG that comes to mind is the Lord of the Rings LCG, where basically you are a band of heroes, about three heroes, I believe, and you're going through different missions, which is produced by this extra deck that you have on the table, which is your enemy. And then you have to go through a particular storyline from the actual book or movie. This is something that you kind of don't need to invest so much into because you can just put it on your shelf whenever your friends are over. You introduce them to the game, skim over the rules quickly, and you introduce them to that.
This is something I like about the LCGs actually, because they do have an element of the CCG as you mentioned, Don, but they sort of go away from the, let's call it a blind buy purchase sort of model that other TCGs and CCGs work by. So it's not buy a booster pack, open it, oh my gosh, see what I'm gonna get, it's so exciting, but you have no idea. It's a blind buy. They have full sets, so you can buy the whole set, whole box set. You know, it comes in a nice, nicely decorated, and the artwork on the box is beautiful. You know, inside is the full set of cards, and then you can have expansion packs if you want to add on to the story, the sort of standalone stories that come with the main box.
And the beauty is, LCGs were introduced by Fantasy Flight originally. So if you are curious what is inside each of these expansion decks, you can actually look them up on their website and it gives you a full list of cards of what you're going to find inside and what it entails. Let's take Lord of the Rings because I have that, right? I just purchased the starter box and then I kind of skipped ahead and got the one of the demon dude. What's his name again? There was a demon guy in Lord of the Rings when they were crossing. You shall not pass.
I'm not that familiar with Lord of the
Anyways,
Rings, my dude.
those of you listening know which part. So basically, there's just this deck that basically runs through that scenario, where pretty much it's you against this big demon dude. I also bought a kind of a secondary starter set, which introduces the Hobbit. So as you can see, it's really much open to what you're into or what your play group is into.
Most definitely. So, I mean, they have everything from Game of Thrones to those of you interested in HP Lovecraft. They've got, Arkham Horror and Call of Cthulhu. They've got Legend of the Five Rings, Star Wars. There's a long list. The only question that I have for you, Don, maybe you know this a little bit more than I do. We're because we're talking about physical versus digital here. What kind of digital space is there for these LCGs?
So the only LCG that has, to my knowledge, that has come out from all of this is the Lord of the Rings one, and you can find it on Steam. It's not exactly a free to play, to be honest with you. You have to kind of purchase it as if you're purchasing the starter box, and then open the scenarios with maybe €5, €10 extra here or there. So there is a digital version, however, it's not free in this case.
Well, I mean, if you're going to buy the physical printed version, it's not free either.
Yeah, but again, it's kind of like, do you have a play group that's would love to play this, or are you the only kind of Lord of the Rings fan in the house? It seems
Yeah.
from between me and you, Ben, I'm the only Lord of the Rings guy, which is
Yeah,
kind of sad.
clearly because yeah, but the game, sure, if you had to buy it on Steam, going back to financials options that we spoke about earlier in the episode, buying it on Steam and keeping a digital copy is not really much of an investment there because there's not much you can do with that.
Yeah, exactly. So once again, we kind of fall back to what we said in episode one. If you do have physicals, you can easily get rid of them in a bulk, sell them off to collectors, sell them off to people who want it. There's even stores that actually buy them in bulk and pay you off if you have enough cards. For quite a like 10 cents per card or 5 cents per card if it's just like commons and such. So in reality, whenever you have a physical product and it's in good condition and doesn't necessarily have to be mint, you can easily just go ahead and sell it and get your not necessarily your monies back per se, but you at least can say, listen, it wasn't completely a waste.
At least it's not sitting on your Steam library and just not doing anything there. At least, if it's on the shelf and you maybe don't play it perhaps because of your play group, you can at least, exchange it for something. Trade it off, maybe. Get something back.
Another version of card game that we haven't mentioned, and I don't really want to into it too much because we have an episode coming up about them. It falls more under like a card game that is not a TCG, it's not a CCG, because you kind of buy it and you build on it because you build. It's kind of like under a board game, and these are the deck building games, where basically the SCGs kind of fall under the deck building. However, these in specific, it's pretty much like the Marvel one that we're talking about, if you've ever heard of it, where players build their deck by drafting cards, playing as a specific character, hero, or whatever the team is, and then you unlock a level and add cards to your deck. So that's another card game you can kind of get into for games nights in specific. It takes more than one player. LCGs usually take only up to two players max. You can even play it solo, by the way.
Some of them have really good solo campaigns, actually. And if you're really into the story and you want to relive, let's say you saw a movie and you really wanted to do that sort of experience. Let's say Lord of the Rings, you wanted to be a hobbit or an elf or run through the Shire. You want to get that experience of the story, and LCG is where it's at. It's really dive in, experience, relive the scenarios. Yeah, so to wrap things up, there are a lot of pros, a lot of cons for the digital and the physical card games, as we discussed in our first episode. Try to feel things out, see where it's at, what your likes and dislikes are. And if you really want to get your hands on a particular card game, and there is an online version, and you want to help your wallet, try that out because most of them are free.
So that brings us to the end of this episode, guys. Thanks a lot for listening. If you do like our content, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We also have our Patreon page, as we mentioned earlier in the episode. That is patreon.com/playupmt, where you can support us for as little as €3 per month and you get exclusive content there.
And if you want to sponsor us indirectly, we've also got our sponsors once again for this episode. If you want to buy any of those board games, add to your collection, maybe an upcoming board game night, you can do so at warmongergamesmalta.com. They are offering you guys, our listeners, a 10% discount code on all non discounted board games with the promo code, all caps, PULBG3014. This expires on the 21st and it's for local use only.
We also have the Miniature Corner Studio, which do 3D printing for all your miniatures, dice towers, and even they do these really cool, awesome, custom made um, drink holders, like mugs, so to speak. And they're giving us also a 10% discount code with every purchase you make, which is PlayUp21. That's all lowercase, PlayUp21, whenever you make an order from their Facebook page at the moment.
Okay, that's everything that we've got for today. We hope you enjoyed listening and we'll see you in the next one.
See you guys next week. Thanks so much for listening. Stay safe.